Welcome to Pray for Micah. And now your host, Micah Chrisman.
Now we're live.
So I got a smog tattoo, and this is the original. I don't know if you can hear it. Let's go this way.
Yep, there it is. We can see it now. Yeah.
So that's the original
Red Dragon.
Yeah, it's the original drawing that Tolkien. Well, not. I mean, it's one of the original drawings that Tolkien did for the map in The Hobbit. So it's funny because there's a really ridiculous story with all this. I think maybe it was before the pandemic. Oh, shut up, dog. You're fine. You've been outside. Sorry, Callie is all of a sudden deciding she wants to be participating. So before the pandemic even hit, we had one of those like little marquee signs that we had right next to our front, like right next to our door inside with, you could change the letters and stuff. And at one point I put the quote on there from The Hobbit where he says, never laugh at live dragons. And so I kind of started joking that Michaela was a dragon and you shouldn't laugh at her because she'll like destroy you. Oh, my video. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Kind of glitched out for a second.
And so I kind of started joking that she's a dragon, just because she's fucking terrifying. And then it kind of became an even bigger joke with like, well, she's really into the Enneagram and she's an Enneagram 8, and like they are like just like scary, like everyone thinks that they're like hardcore, we're gonna get everything done and consequences be damned type people. And over time she kind of, she was never against it, but like over time she started embracing it as like an actual nickname. And then it kind of became it took on a life of its own. Our friends, would say that Smog's Brood was coming to hang out with them. And so we just it became a thing, and she really embraced it. At one point I got her a t-shirt with a picture of Smog on it that says, I am fire, I am death. And then she had another friend who's also an Enneagram 8 because she's into astrology, and so they both have that shirt now, and it's it kind of became a whole thing. And so then just over the last couple years, it's become like, well, that's Michaela. She's, fierce and awesome and like terrifying, and yet at the same time, like there's no one else you'd want on you would want her on your team because she would just destroy everyone else. And so, she guards her treasures very, very highly. And so
guards her treasures. She's a fierce one.
She is.
Michaela.
So that kind of became her nickname. And so that became, for basically ever since I started working in the brewery, a little bit too before that with my previous job even, I just couldn't wear my wedding ring very often because I was just worried about like snagging my hand on machinery or whatever. And so I didn't have my ring on. And so I was like, man, I want something. Like, I don't want to just do like, a letter or something on my finger, which is fine, but like it just didn't,
Sure.
it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so we kind of started talking about it, and she's like, well, I want to get something too. And so we thought about it for a while, and then we have an artist that we really like here that has done some work for both of us before. And so I think we made the appointment back in like March or April of this year and finally got in just the other day. And so, so I got Smog to represent Michaela, and she got a fountain pen to represent me. And that like the particular image she got of it is pretty cool because, I mean, fountain pens, you think about someone who's kind of fancy and old fashioned and
right.
So
I thought it was your arm in the photo. I was like, that looks like a classy Josh Casey pen.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I probably would have wanted that if she didn't. And the way that it's drawn, it kind of has like it's not just like a whole body of a pen. It kind of opens up and shades out, and so it's kind of like open ended and kind of so there you could go into all the different little ideas and details and stuff, but yeah, it was pretty cool. So we just got both of those done same day.
Is it still itchy?
It's actually
the itchy phase.
Mine isn't itchy. Hers has been itchy. Mine has been it's just still really tender. Like I always liken my tattoos like those first couple days to being more of a sunburn. Like that's kind of how it feels to me,
right?
Because I'm super pale and so I get sunburns all the time. So it's kind of like I'm used to that feeling. And this time it's been a little different because I've got the they did the almost like shrink wrapped shit that they put on there
Oh,
that
really? Huh.
like it like protects it and helps it heal for the first like 3 days, and then you take it off, and then then you start lotioning and cleaning it and everything. So I haven't actually. It's a little almost fuzzy right now because it's there's a little bit of clotting and stuff going on under it. So when I finally take this off tomorrow, I can clean it and see it a little better. But
Yeah. So yeah, this is like still 3 days fresh. I forgot. Like, yeah,
yeah,
you just said that the other day.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was just a
wow.
couple days ago. So
I
yeah,
love your water bottle that's a gin bottle, but not really gin.
it's not really. Although I will say that so Cardinal Spirits,
You can,
local
yeah.
distillery, they
Oh yeah.
are
Gotta give them a shout out.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're fucking great, man.
By the way, this
I,
podcast isn't sponsored by anybody, but
no, but if
yeah,
it was going to be sponsored by someone, it'd be sponsored by local booze.
I've kind of just determined that this will be a show that just happens to promote everybody by
Yeah,
accident.
right.
We'll like Google that. Oh, we just threw out the word, and I'll never get paid for any of it. So
Exactly.
sorry.
That's the way to be.
Tell me about this distillery.
Yeah, Cardinal Spirits is a local distillery. They vodka, gin. I mean, they do a lot of the clear liquors, so vodka, gin, and rum. They also have like spiced rum, and they've and then tons of liqueurs and stuff that they've done over the years, and a couple different and a more botanical kind of flavored is the wrong word, so more botanical spiced kind of gin. They've moved into bourbon in the last couple years, which has been pretty great. So we're huge fans, and it's funny because this is a pretty old bottle. And I've put like, you can't see them, but very little small quotation marks around the word gin so that I would like be able to tell the difference, because there have definitely been a couple times where either I have accidentally added water to like a little bit of gin left in an actual gin bottle, thinking I was just refilling my water bottle. And then there was another time recently where we like had gin and tonics the night before, and I left the gin sitting out on the counter. I got up the next morning to like just take a big swig of water like I normally do in the morning, and just a whole mouthful of just straight gin at like 7 a.m. I was like, holy shit!
Praise be.
Right, yeah. So it's really good gin, but 7 a.m. is kind of early for me to be jumping into the
just good, good mouthwash. Just good
mouthwash. It was.
You just got good oral hygiene.
I guess, yeah. So, but it's cool. They do a special edition of their vodka, like a Pride vodka that, like 10% of it, I think 10 or 20% of it goes to, local Pride projects here in town, and then, they make everything they make is really good. So we like supporting them and local breweries, and their bottles are like the glass bottles are awesome. So I use it for water.
Man, it looks like a pirate bottle to use for water.
And it's funny because I specifically chose one that was a clear liquor so that when people see me, they think I'm just drinking that. It's funny.
Makes it much easier to pretend to be an alcoholic in the future. Just
it's
just water. It's just
still water. Yeah,
you're setting that precedent now, and then everyone will be like, "Oh, he's just been drinking water."
Blonde.
I'm actually taking a break from alcohol at the moment. I guess you could say. I guess you could say I'm doing a kind of cleanse. Just
you said you were doing tea.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, I'm doing like an Arnold Palmer. That's what it's called.
Oh.
Yeah, just so same amount of sugar, probably terrible, but just I don't know. Makes me feel better that take a break from the liqueurs. Mainly just because I got on a scale and I realized, oh, I'm not happy and I need to lose some weight. So that's always the struggle. And I'm like, oh, Thanksgiving's coming up in a couple months, and if I don't actually take advantage of dropping some summer weight, like I'll just be hit that New Year's real hard.
Yeah, no, that kind of happened to me. That is happening to me right now, where I'm like, okay, so I can't fit into any of my shorts that don't have elastic in the waist, so I think I need to start counting calories again. So I got my Fitness Pal app out again and started counting everything.
I had a real low moment a couple weekends ago. So I went to Worlds of Fun with Austin and Emily and my boy Tom, and they wouldn't let me ride the detonator ride. I was like just an inch or so from being able to latch the belt, and I like literally they had to like have me get off like before they launched the thing. Oh man, I think I felt more embarrassed for me. Like, oh no, our friend Mike can't ride this ride. And I was just like, I was like, this is my wake up call. This is my here's your moment of I mean, I'm trying to give myself some grace because we're a year and a half into the pandemic. It's already hard enough to not like sit and work at your computer all day and then eat and not exercise. But then, trying to give up smoking too, you'll see me with toothpicks in my mouth and just like, man, I've just probably been subconsciously even just eating the last couple of months just because, I've been cutting out cigarettes out of my regimen, my daily regimen. It's usually like for me a 7 a.m. cigarette with coffee. It's been 5 years of doing that, and it's just weird to not have that. So then it's like, oh well, I'll make some muffins for breakfast. Wait, why am I a muffin? Okay.
Well, it's man, and I totally get it. Like I mean, like I've spent a lot of time on this in therapy recently, just discussing, body image and trying to figure out exactly what's going on with kind of how I've understood my relationship to my body throughout the years. And, my therapist has some history with art therapy. And so, one of the things we did was sort of like have me draw sort of a representation of like how I envision myself, like how I see myself, or how I think of myself. And then to like, kind of, I've actually for a while was keeping that picture in my car, and like every day to get in my car and see that picture, that like kind of almost comic version of myself, and like teaching myself to accept it. And and spending time, it sounds weird, but like talking to your body and telling your body thank you for like, I've made it to 35 and I'm healthy. I really haven't had any massive health issues, and I'm active and I'm able to like do all these things I want to do. Like so like focusing on that kind of stuff, and and I think like with childhood trauma, and I think there's some body dysmorphia stuff going on as well, or at least like lighter versions of that. But just looking like as we kind of went through some of the DSM definitions of it, I think there's some of that involved. But like I know that's been a struggle as well, and so I'm curious. Aside from just trying to be more healthy, what are some ways that you're trying to reckon with the way that you physically interact with the world?
It's a really good question, man. And so just officially, like we're started, right? Like we're going.
You can take whatever you want here. That's why I'm asking you questions.
No, this is good. No, I was just want to make sure be a better host. Like sure we're recording this. No, honestly, I'm like going through something really similar with my therapist. We haven't like done any visualization stuff like what you're talking about, but I've just described to her like that I don't see myself as like this big presence. You know what I mean? Like, and I think she just acknowledged that like there's legitimately a part of me internally that probably feels small, feels vulnerable to the world. And then there's like moments where like there's a part of me that wields my bigness, like I just know, like when I get angry, like suddenly I reckon like I'm a big dude. Like, okay, I'm gonna beat you up, Sam Schwegler. There, I brought him in. There, his name's been mentioned.
Sam.
We know that's all he's listening to my episodes for. He just wants to know if his name's mentioned. So there it is, Sam Schwegler.
Yeah, we talk shit about him.
But then just recognizing like, I don't know, like that was how my moment I had at Worlds of Fun. Like I literally wanted to just sink into the pits. Like it was like childhood trauma all over again, being the fat kid at the birthday party, wearing my shirt at the pool. And here I am as an adult being denied to ride a ride, not because I'm too tall, but because I can't latch this thing down.
Yeah.
And I want to justify it and be like, well, it's Worlds of Fun, haven't updated their belts, blah, 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 And it's like,
Yeah.
or, society just tells you like for safety reasons, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. All I'd say is that rather than shut down, I just kind of had to just literally have a moment with myself, standing on the bridge, watching my friends ride the ride, and just acknowledge, like, yeah, Micah, like, you could do without biscuits and gravy, for brunch.
No.
You can
Stop
do
it.
You
can do without a lot of things, but not biscuits and gravy.
Just years of like, oh, let's eat some pizza and have some donuts, like. I don't know. And that's the thing is like I realized and I talked with therapist, like I have these moments of like, oh man, it's major motivation. I dropped like 20 pounds, 30 pounds, and then I gain it all back. And it's just, and they always say like, you're not, and it's because, the dieting culture we all kind of grew up with and trying to unlearn some of that. So I don't know. I'm just trying to like change my routine. So like I'm at my computer all day. So like I'm getting some rollerblades. I'm gonna, and I'm gonna start rollerblading with Rayla, and we'll just like, she'll get a jog out of it. I'll be able to go further than just our regular walks. It's actually exercising because you won't catch me jogging with her. Like, too big. My knees hurt. I'm an old man now. I'm 32.
Right. Well, and that's funny because I on the running thing. I mean, I at one point, when I was in Missouri, I was doing half marathon distance runs, and like it was great, but it just became, especially by the time we moved here, I can't do this anymore. Aside from the fact of like when you're running, every third run, you're like, I might shit my pants if I don't get home in time. but then on top of it, it's just like your knees hurt and your ankles hurt, and then I was trying to run with good posture. Like there's like, there's ways to run with good posture, but like my neck was hurt. Everything was hurting. I was like, this is stupid. I can like burn this out other ways. That's what's something. But it's funny because I think you and I had almost exact opposite experiences in that the respect of how we interact physically with the world. Because for me, I've always imagined myself, I think I've seen myself bigger than I am. Because people like when I'm talking with people, like, oh yeah, I don't really see you as being like this particular size, and I'm like, oh no, I always see myself as like 30 pounds bigger than I am. But it kind of had the same. So and I'm shorter than you, so like I've never had the experience of being able to physically dominate someone, just like visually. I've never been intimidating, and so for me, my bigness has always been a vulnerability. It's always been a thing that like people, it draws people towards me in a negative sense. Like I've always been a target of bullies because I'm like this small little fat kid that people want to make fun of because I'm easy pickings, right? And so like for me, I have never walked through a mall without feeling, and just like as an example, like a crowded public place, of like without feeling just completely paralyzed by fear the whole time. And so, and that's all the time. I mean, and think about the fact that, I spent a good portion of the first decade of my professional life standing in front of people, either playing music or speaking. Right. And like the whole time I'm just sitting there terrified because I feel as though I'm inviting people to come and say something terrible about me. Or to make fun of me, or to, whatever, hurt me or in some way or another. And so, so for me, it's like the opposite of, I've had to try and figure out how do I make peace with who I am. And, and you talk about like dieting. And so, there is there's your capital D diet of like, this is the food that I eat, and the exercise, the calories that I burn and the calories I take in that help me continue to live day to day, which is different than like going on a diet, right? And so like last year at the pandemic, Michaela and I started Weight Watchers together because she had done it before, and I was like, yeah, sure. I had some friends that were doing it. I was like, oh, I'll get on that, and so we did it, and like I immediately dropped like 20 or 30 pounds. And I was getting back down to like where I was when I was running all the time, but I wasn't having to exercise very much. It was just a change in diet. But the fact is that the moment I changed that, it immediately all came back. And so I just started to realize that like a lot of what I was doing throughout my life was weight watching. I was literally watching my weight. And so I've tried to divorce myself from the numbers and trying to find a place where I feel fit, and I also can wear the clothes that I have, and just trying to be content with that. And physically I'm relatively fit. I mean, I can do a 10-mile bike ride and it's no big deal, but like I can't wear my clothes. And so obviously there's a disconnect somewhere in there. And so I'm trying to find where that is and make it so that those things kind of come together. So yeah, anyway, I think that's interesting how we both have similar issues, but they kind of like diverge in certain ways.
Right. I mean, it's just, I don't know. And I've heard people get, all pissy about the, body image empowerment kind of movement. And they're like, it's just an excuse to like live unhealthy. It's going to kill you. Like,
yeah.
And like, on the one hand, like, yeah, there's like scientific proof. Like I'm 32 years old. I have a high cholesterol. Like I shouldn't be that where I'm at, physically as a 32-year-old. Like that has consequences as you get older. And like, at the same time, I think there's something, what I think that like culture, what they're really trying to speak to and what about is like the idea of what we perceive as beauty is like, it used to be like, this whatever for men, it would be, big, masculine, V-shaped, Arnold Schwarzenegger, maybe not that, crazy looking, but, and then, for women, it's like super small and petite. And now it's like, oh, people are figuring out like being curvy is beautiful. So just know that I love you, Josh, and all your curves.
Oh, thanks.
If you love
thanks,
me
Micah,
and all my curves.
I love all of your curves.
And yet, like you're saying, like, I think it's like being able to at least acknowledge, like, hey, I just want to feel comfortable in my body. And like you're saying, I want to be able to run. I want to be able to rollerblade with my dog and like not feel like my knees hurt. Okay, let's just get there.
Yeah.
And
if I could feel like if I could flip a switch right now and I could feel perfectly comfortable and at home in the body that I have right now, and I never can wear the clothes that I wore back when I was running all the time, and I have to like buy all new clothes to fit into a new body size, but I could feel completely at home in what I am, I would take that deal any day of the week. And so I'm trying to, it's trying to find that space. And it's just, that's just one of those areas of life where it just seems that there's a balance in there somewhere. And I think when we realize like some people pursue health and fitness in the like working out all the time, eating very specific foods, all that, like that is a part of their life. I'm not interested in having that to be a part of my life, and so there has to be a balance in there somewhere, right? So
I was literally on a walk with Rayla earlier tonight, and I just, realized like exercise means that I'm breaking down parts of my body. I'm literally destroying cells, and it feels good because my body's replenishing eventually. And it's just like, only I would sit here and have a nihilistic kind of existential thought of just like, what is life and it's meaningless? Everything has to die in order to live. Jesus was right,
Exactly. Yeah. The Buddha was right. Life is suffering.
Right, exactly. All of them. They're all like it's the seed has to go in the ground and die. Like okay,
exactly.
I gotta like freaking F it. Like I haven't decided if I'm gonna cuss on this show yet. Probably maybe not on the first one. We'll see. I'm probably gonna cuss a lot.
I think I may have had a few, but that may have been before we clicked record. I don't know. So we'll find out.
Hey, we'll just promise we'll cuss from this point forward. But
there you go.
Here's my forewarning to people. I'll probably start cussing now.
There you go.
I won't stop and catch myself. Some reason I had this thought, like my nephew or somebody's going to stop and listen to the first episode, and I don't want him to hear me cussing. I'm like, he's got to know this is who his uncle is. He's got to know. His parents will just aptly, ban him from watching it, and listening, but only the ones old enough.
I like on how on my show we've got the caveat audience, the beware listener beware. Like,
right.
This is how it's gonna go.
Yeah. You want to tell us a little about your show? By the way, this is Josh. This is Josh Casey. Everybody, this is our intro.
Oh, hi.
No,
Hi, yeah.
that was just us warming up.
Well, listen, I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but yeah. So my name's Josh Casey. I have written things, and someday we'll continue to write more. I have a book called Tracking Desire, a memoirish walk through faith, failure, and finding God under my feet. And then I have a podcast called Drunk Church History, in which previously it was like we would just pick a random saint and talk about them, and talk about the good and the bad and the ugly of their own lives and their interactions with, the institution of the church, which most of the time was bad for most of the people that we talked about, because most of my experiences with the church have been bad. So it was fine. But we've moved into more kind of serial formatting. And so we're doing a series on Christian sexuality, which has been interesting, kind of seeing how did we get to this weird kind of puritanical thing that we have going on. So those are the two big things that you find me doing right now. But Micah, what about you? You write things every so often.
Yeah, I'm actually the New Vork Times bestselling author, MJ Chrisman, of The Remnant, The Legend of the Seer.
Vork? What's a Vork?
Hey, it's just something that me and my friends came up with that basically, so it's not copyright issues or trademark issues with New York Times. Like, we just made up like New Vork Times. Like, and it's like picture the same font, and like the Y just kind of looks like a very cursive V, like New Vork Times bestselling author.
I love it.
That way, so if the New York Times hears me, once again, they're getting a promo on this show. There they go. That I'm not getting paid for, but just know I'm not trademarking. So.
Well, the English town of York used to be called by the Vikings was called Jorvik with a J.
Oh,
so you could be New Jorvik.
New Jorvik. Oh, I like that. That's what.
And you guys the Viking tie-in. And there you go.
That's much better. I like that. Yeah, my people. Or a hodgepodge of those people, anyways.
Yeah, so MJ Chrisman is the author of the Remnant series and other various things.
Yeah, I used to have a blog called Fence Traveler. Like every other project, it lasted probably about 7-8 months.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
It's longer than most of mine.
And that was like, really pushing myself. I think the problem is I enjoy writing, but I've just fully come to accept that it's my hobby. Like, I do other work during the day. My writing, it happens when the creativity flows. And that's how it kind of was when I was a kid. That's just how it is in the world where you're not a paid to be an author yet person. You just have to write things. So I like writing short stories. Like I've submitted some like short stories of like flash fiction contests lately. That was kind of fun. But I'm working on, steadily book projects all around. Like I still, for the 400 followers I have who read the Legend of the Seer 10 years ago, those people, if you're here listening to this, I'm like 2/3 done with the second book. But I've tried to hit up publishers, before the pandemic, been turned down. So if it's going to happen, I'd have to self-publish it. And I just, again, it's kind of one of those things, got to get the money to make that happen. So, and then truthfully, finding some other creativity in a new book project that I'm writing that's kind of based around simulation theory. It's going to be more of a sci-fi book, more like thriller sci-fi novel. So I don't know, like the problem with the fantasy series is it's been literally a lifelong project. I started when I was 14 years old, just writing in my parents' computer, trying to make sure that, they don't catch me looking at porn. No, I'm just kidding. Family computer, you know how it is. They're going to catch you.
Well, and it just, when we're younger, it goes so slow. You hear the. It's like, oh, I got some neck. Yes. Oh shit, they're coming home. You gotta click it off.
Man, gotta stop. Yep. It was one of those sad things. Sorry, Mom, for listening to this, but you knew more about it. So, anyways, I would work on the novel and then my faith, and just so much has changed, and so it's just been really hard to kind of reconcile the culture of the world that I created, the fantasy world. Kind of, it's been my own struggles, my own faith journey. And so when I kind of come back to it, it's usually when I'm trying to like rework some kind of life standpoint I'm in. Like trying to, it'll always, so I just like, okay, if this is going to always be my forever childhood project, then I should just start writing something else and maybe I'll finish that.
Yeah.
Or I'll just be the person who has a ton of unfinished projects, and that's okay. So I'll make a podcast to talk about it, and then everyone can like shame me on here for not finishing the writing the projects.
I would never shame you for not finishing a writing project. But and watch this beautiful segue. So Micah, who was the child that began the Remnant series that now sits before me in this podcast? How did you get from there to here?
Just stepping on all of the little people I could to make it to the great podium and platform I'm at now.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I grew up in Green Valley, Missouri, and about 20 minutes east of Kansas City, on a little small farm that is now gone. My parents have sold it, and after 40 years of us living on it and like 80 years or whatever being in the family, it's just now bulldozed and ready for extended like subdivision development. And so it was just a weird kind of experience to grow up surrounded by farms, and like I-70 was there, but like my dad remembers that being built, and like going right through the communities there. And that became like the lifeline. Like most of those folks who started moving out there is because they could afford it, and then they could drive to the city. Or of course, there's white flight too that happened. So don't ignore that.
Oh no, there's people that don't look like me.
Oh no, we should go live out in Green Valley. That's where they went to live. Now, our family, we grew up just in the most beautiful landscape, like up on a hill, lots of trees to run around. And so my brother and I and all my siblings, like we have millions of just brilliant memories of just like, I'll probably tear up and cry just thinking about it, just thinking of everything gone now. But I actually had the privilege of going home to help my parents pack and move, and made like a video of just like a collage of like kind of different seasons. Like I got some winter photos and videos, and so I'm going to make something for them for Christmas, and just like walking around the property before it was like totally demolished, and just,
it's beautiful.
Yeah. Just be able to share like, those memories with our kids or kids, just be able to remember like, hey, this was a place that wasn't just a center point for my family, but like a center point for like our church community, so I grew up, we were evangelical Baptists, and my dad was a youth pastor for most of my like young childhood years.
Yeah.
So all I remember is like just an open door where people were just coming in and out, just mom's feeding people constantly. And, literally we'd have these youth events where buses would come from the church. There'd be 200 youth, like teenagers, just coming out for this huge bonfire, playing like, capture the flag and stuff in the dark, and these like big remote fields. And it was like a really good time. Mudsliding, hay bale jumping, the whole 9 yards. Basically, we were also homeschooled. So like most of my day was like getting up, go do my chores, maybe feed the chickens, feed the pigs or whatever, do homework, do school. And then like sometime around 1 or 2 o'clock, just like, okay, we're done. And just like go play with my brother, with friends over. We just go dress up in camo, play war, whatever, out in the woods, you name it. We'd just be gone for hours, just the whole day, just gone.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was kind of like when I started to like really build out the fantasy of the world of Trinobia. And like as a kid was like, Narnia was kind of like, I was reading those books. The Lord of the Rings movies had just kind of started coming out. So there's this whole kind of new renaissance of fantasy happening. And so I just remember it like all that blowing my way. And so, or blowing my mind. So like friends that would come over, and we basically would LARP. We would just like fill knapsacks full of snacks like hobbits, and we would just be out in the woods all day. We'd just pretend there was monsters jumping out of the trees. We'd run, like
I love it.
And like we would literally convince ourselves like, oh my gosh, here comes the flock of birds. The eyes of Saruman are watching us, And, like,
you gotta hide.
We gotta hide. And like
the Crabine of Dunland. Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna always know the actual names, the actual shit with Lord of the Rings, you know.
Yes, unfortunately, I will.
So yeah, so my dad, like, we just had so much rich community of youth and different folks, and family would come out, and that's what I think I just had to really wrestle with myself as the farm was like being sold, and we were literally taking the whole place down board by board just to utilize the resources because everything's so expensive. We're in the middle of a pandemic,
Yeah.
And it was just a realization that, like, obviously it's cliche, but it's like, home is where your people are, and not necessarily like yes, this was our home, and I'm like acknowledging that loss, but at the same time, like, I have to just acknowledge that, like, my family are still so close. Like, we're all spread out at the moment, but yet, like, we'll always have this like anchor of like memories and this hub of memories to be able to share with each other, despite the fact that the land's gone.
And I hope that maybe, even though over time it's going to be developed, and I know that, you've talked about renaming streets and stuff that will speak to the past there. But I hope that whoever is in the, whatever McMansion house that is built on the
Right.
suburb that gets put wherever the farm used to be, that like there is still kind of a lingering thisness about the place.
Right.
There's kind of that it becomes sort of a thin place where people can sense that they're used, there has been love in an area. And it sounds very woo woo and not, very, not the sort of Christianity that we grew up in, although I would say it's very Christian. If you want to look at it in a particular way, but that you can sense when a place is full of closeness with divinity, closeness with wholesomeness and wholeness. And and I know that both of us have kind of moved away from some of the, that's definitely, I think that's part of the next part of the journey to hear about. But like, I know that we've moved away from maybe what we were given as we grew up, but that doesn't mean that you can't connect with and still, what's the transcend and include, with what you had, and find that wholeness wherever it still lingers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, in many ways, like, I went back to visit it with my friend Tommy because I hadn't been out there since they bulldozed the house, and I'm just glad that, like, none of us were really there. I kind of wanted to be there to like film it, but I was just kind of But yeah, just standing there, it's all just a pile of dirt. I mean, like you said, it just like, yeah, I think there's something sacred that was planted there. And like you said, just because it's been uprooted and it's going to be replanted, and there'll be different families, different people there. I like to think that it's going to, like you said, share something that echoes into that.
And before you all were there, it was something else.
Yes.
It may have been before it was a farm. It may have been just woodland, or before it was woodland, it may have been a prairie. And
right.
There were other beings, whether it was animals or people that came through that area, and you're part of the cycle. And I think all too often we tend to think, well, whatever phase that we've experienced in a place is like the thing. Whereas like currently, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been living in an apartment, and it causes you to be more aware that other people have lived here before you, and other people will live here after you. That this land has been used for other things beforehand. We have some woods, a mountain biking trail right out behind our apartment complex, and if you walk back in there, you can see, I mean, what are essentially the ruins of like a like Boy Scout camp, basically back there. You can see cinder block foundations of what used to be like their their dorms or other buildings, and you can see areas where they had split logs and turned them into pews essentially for meetings.
Wow.
So you can realize, oh, like this land was used for that, and before that it was something else. And so, and you can, I think there's an online database where you can see what Native American tribes have like these were lands of theirs before they were, removed by settlers. And so, you can even see like, oh, this is like ancestral lands of this tribe and this tribe and this tribe. And
like, we always knew like at some point we all have to exist somewhere, and we're not going to exist forever in that place, And so it's, and 100 years from now it'll be the robots who are living here. And
exactly.
Who will be here in the future and will probably not be humans.
Yeah, probably.
Actually, I saw this article the other day. I guess it's an asteroid that they've marked or studying, watching its trajectory. And apparently, if like two certain factors, which are highly unlikely, some kind of like, I don't know, two different points of magnetic pole and within our kind of solar system orbit. Basically, bottom line is if it goes in a certain direction, then in like 300 years or something, like it'll potentially hit Earth. And I just had this weird kind of like just dread of just thinking of like, will humans be around in 300 years? Will we even be able to be alive to see a comet destroy us, And just, I don't know, weird place to like think about how at any point, like life as we know it it's pretty fragile,
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for the moments where like, I don't know what tomorrow will look like, but at least my parents can retire now, like they've worked their, hearts and asses off for people their whole lives. They've been, my dad, was in ministry for 40-something years and just, really touched a lot of people, like, and they still plan to do that, like that's the thing, like they've already, their new home, that's just across the way in Grain Valley, they've already filled it full of the farm love, all of the all the things. And like, their heart is just to like, still like invite their neighbors in and to like,
it's awesome,
share the love of God with them.
That's so great. So you were homeschooled, as you mentioned, and then and you have this. Well, no, and like you, and you had a close knit family, and I mean, yes, my wife was homeschooled, so we make all the jokes. And actually, one of our close friends, our neighbor, the wife was homeschooled and the husband was not, and so we always like to make fun of our wives. But so like you were homeschooled, and so you were in a close knit family, and you mentioned growing up Baptist, so you can infer is relatively conservative,
right?
And so I think maybe the best way to kind of frame that, without it going for hours and hours here, maybe tell the story of how your initial book was written versus some of the things that you have changed as you've gone back, and kind of express how in the course of your journey, how has some of that become noticeable to you? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
For sure. Yeah, no, it's a good, like, kind of microcosm, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, when you first read The Legend of the Seer, our main character, William, is basically given a divine vision and a calling from God of this world. I think it's changed a million times. It was like Elohim, it's Elohim, and now it's Elohim. Try to make it a little less subtle. That's the other thing. When you're a little kid, try to make up fantasy words, and there's like a Bible full of just, oh, sure, like Malachi.
Yeah, words I haven't heard before. Sure.
Right. Words that are, like, let's just throw in a bunch of Bible words. So try to go back and change some of that, make it a little more its own world. But when your main character's name is William, you're pretty much just stuck, like. You
could have called him Bill. I mean.
Yeah, that's true. Bill the Warrior.
Bill the Warrior.
Bill the Seer. That just sounds pretty.
I like that. Please, someone send a drawing of Bill the Seer.
Bill the Seer. Send that to, Pray for Micah podcast @gmail.com.
Fan art. That's what you need.
Right. And, I self-published it when I was 21. I was in the middle of college and just thought, well, kind of ran into the same problems you do now. Where like, you're a no-name author, no following. How are you supposed to get an audience? watched, some kind of ad thing that was like, hey, if you self-publish with us, Zondervan might publish you. So I went with Westbow Press and like paid them to publish it. And, like I want to acknowledge like there's still like the feat of like being that young, like writing a book from 14 to 21 and publishing it. It's like, I'm like proud of myself in that.
Yeah,
one.
that's a huge feat, man.
Like 115,000 words, the original version. And it was well received by like people in my church, because it was very much like this clear-cut good versus evil hero's journey. And then, as I kind of started going to college and just started to wrestle with my faith more distinctly as an adult, it just became pretty clear to me that like my mind was expanding to think about other variations of like my faith that maybe don't have to look how I grew up. So initially in college, it was like, still going to campus ministry. You were my pastor. We were doing, communion every Sunday. And you really taught me like, I don't know, the beauty of the Eucharist and the sacraments and just some of the mysticism that's lost in the evangelical church, right? Just like, the box and the smoke machines and the bands, it just gets old. And yet, I think there was still just a lot of wrestling to be had. Still a lot of wrestling, and you'll hear all about it throughout this show, I promise. I kid all to you in this one episode. But I realized I started to like revisit my book that, like this is a worldview of a person who was cared for in a very loving family that was homeschooled, where my whole culture was church people and did not represent. And it also was just in line with all of the other like European fantasy like tropes, and truthfully, just like the, medieval chivalry kind of sexism, I mean? Like, it's not that, I was trying to like belittle women, at least the queen, the other main character is actually a queen of a country. But like, why does she got to slink to William's side? Just small little subtle things. So I started to like go back and just reread it through new eyes of just re-envisioning who I was in this text. And like, this is not reflective of who I want to write or be like. And yet, knowing I'm not trying to write a politically correct book because that's never going to be possible. But
it's only politically correct for a very short time. Right.
And at the end of the day, George R.R. Martin and them get away with it because they're like, well, it's just that medieval was a shitty time. So, that's how, like the raping and pillaging, that's just part of the package deal. But I realized like, hey, there's a way to like, from an ethical, personal standpoint to like show more diversity in your characters and like have other leadership roles that aren't just the white folks, and even changing some of my main characters to not be white folks, like in description. And it was fun to revisit it because then I rewrote it and sent it to a bunch of friends. Josh was one of them. Again, the goal was to reprint and republish the first book. Still have to get the money for it because I think that would be fun to put it back out there with like a second edition essentially for folks. And it's still the same. Like again, I tried to stay true to who I was. Yeah. Like the storyline that it was, like there's still God, he's the all one, Elohim. It's also, but then I changed that a little bit to where it's like, okay, it's the all father and the all mother. So it's like the all one, like trying to just like acknowledge it, like it's a genderless being. And like Obadiah has a conversation with William, like explaining like kind of like it's kind of a nod to like maybe how I see scripture in a way that's like he says like, oh, they used to call God the all one until it was mistranslated and it became all father. And so and everyone started to misinterpret, like they knew that there's like, this all mother side. So I don't know, just giving a nod to like this idea that why does God have to have a penis? Right. Like why does God have to, what makes him male? And
so two things. First one, my middle child, Leland, he was in the car with me the other day, and I have a Jesus action figure that I got a long time ago. He's like missing an arm and everything, and I keep in the cup holder in my car. And at one point, he was like, we were driving. He's like, why does God have to be a boy here? And I was like, so I started into this whole thing with like, well, Jesus, was a man, an actual human being, a man. And he's
Right.
like, yeah, I know that. But like, God's not a man or a girl. God doesn't, and he said, God doesn't have a gender. And I was like, the fuck?
Wow.
Like, this is my 7-year-old.
This kid's
And
gonna school us,
right, I know. And then he was like, and God is both and he said God is all genders. I was like, what? Like, it's like,
Whoa.
whoa, man, you are getting way like yes, like yes, that's brilliant. So that was just a funny moment thinking about that. And then also along those same lines, my dear friend Kay, her name is Kay Ben Avraham, and she wrote a book called The Flower of the Cedar that you can also get on. She self-published it through Kindle, and
Another promotion. Good.
yeah, exactly.
I
And
love
it was kind of a similar thing where she's, when she started out, she was in a different place, and as she, not quite as young, but like as she finished it, a lot of things had changed. But she decided to go ahead and finish and publish the whole thing. So I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic fantasy novel called The Flower of the Cedar. And in that there are some characters, like some races of people see the God figure primarily as male. Some of them see the God figure primarily as female, and some of them actually, like, their lore, essentially the God figure changes according to the seasons. And so like during certain months of the year they refer to the God as masculine, and then during certain months of the year they refer to God as feminine. And like their rights and other things, traditions kind of go along with that over the course of the year. And so which was kind of a cool way of yeah, so that's
Wow.
also it's very interesting to see people try and deal with this. Like, we had this conception of what the divine was, and then as you
Mhm.
grow, you begin to see, oh, this is a lot bigger than these kind of smaller, more narrow conceptions I had that I was given when I was younger.
Absolutely. And I think just like with my novel of like trying to accept that this was a child like
Yeah.
Micah who had that perspective of the world and hold space for that kid
Mm-hmm.
and try to like transport that version, into like a newer kind of different and that same kind of light or perspective. Like I kind of have to look at myself and my faith the same way, right? That like I don't reject my parents or my upbringing
Yeah,
because it taught me a lot of good things.
of
It taught
course.
me like love my neighbor like as myself and like look out for other people and be invested in your community. And like there's so much power in that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I try to say like yes, that's the divine, but when I try to like share with my family or friends or whoever, my differences of like
Mm-hmm.
not believing in organized religion or like having like these church buildings every 10 blocks, 5 blocks, like I was like, I just feel sad when I see it feels like a McDonald's across from a Burger King across from, it just feels like
Yeah.
that's what I see is like people are living in I get it. We live in a broken culture and people are looking for answers. So I'm not trying to shit on everybody who goes to a church and they're trying to find answers to
Mm-hmm.
like life's big questions. What I have a problem with is like, I was told like this is it. Like everything you do has to be funneled through this purpose and this a vision alignment with who we
Yes.
are as a church. And there's no room for anything else. And so that's how like ultimately like that's what's going to happen with trying to hold that and try to be a creative person. Like you're going to be limited. Like
Yep.
I'm trying to vehicle the story of Jesus another repackaged way. And like I just had to realize like this is a fantasy world. I can make up whatever the hell I
can
want.
do whatever I want.
And like it might throw the Christians off, if God does some crazy shit in the next 2 books or something. But I think it's more of like a perspective of like ourselves. And that I don't know, I think that's where I started to kind of wrestle with the Bible itself. Like, it's like we don't use the Bible in scripture. We say or evangelists say we want to use it literally for everything, when it comes to policies, when it comes to big life choices, forcing people their, whatever, politically. And yet when we teach it, it's always like, God's got your back. You're David, and you've got a slingshot. And today, the giant we need to slay is we have this, $2 million youth building we need to build. That's our giant,
right.
And we need to come together and slay that giant. Like, no one's telling me to go.
Motherfucker, you made that giant.
Yeah, like you made that giant. Like, what? How are you using scripture? Like, oh no, we should take it in the context of then. Okay, so I should kill Philistines. Okay, so I think that's the hard part, is that I had a good conversation, with my pops the other day about it, and just like, my family at this point, I'm probably a universalist, so I'll just, if other folks in the world need to know, like maybe I'm some universalist. I don't know. I'm a I don't know person right now, but at the same time, like, every religion has used its power. Anytime people can use power to wield over other people, we're going to do it. Does that mean that all faiths are bad? No. You know what I mean? Just because, someone can use Islam to radicalize people, if someone can use the Bible to radicalize KKK people, like, it's everywhere, like people will use it for power.
I mean, hell, there are radical Buddhists. I mean, if you following shit that happened in like Myanmar with with the Rohingyas. I mean, that is Buddhists that are attacking Muslims. It's just like,
oh my gosh,
all of your preconceptions of like the quote unquote the sort of people that will mete out violence.
Peace-loving Buddhists, right? Or something.
It's like that's not the case. People use whatever they can to separate each other and to categorize, and I think it's funny because as we have maybe moved forward, and I hate even using that language trying to describe it, because what it feels like then is and what it can feel like to the people that you're speaking to, that maybe you have come, the families of spiritual families of origin, you're talking to them and like the whole, even like transcend and include, or include and transcend language that, like, Richard Rohr uses. What it can feel like to them is that, oh, so you've evolved beyond us. Like, you're better than us. You're another version. Like, you're a better, and it's like, that's not what's going on. Like, it's just that, I get one shot at this life. Like, the one guarantee I have is that I'm alive now and I get this one chance. And so if I have questions, I'm going to keep following them, because I can't not. And if you can not, like, if you can not ask the questions and you are content where you are and you can do good and and be loving there, then that's great. I'm glad you can do that, but I can't. And so I'm going to continue to pursue whatever truth seems to look like at the moment. And I think trying to find the language to show the people that you like in the communities that you've come from and the families we've come from, that we're not rejecting them as much as just continuing to walk, not even move forward, because we don't know. I mean, maybe we're walking 10 steps backwards, but like, we're at least continuing to move, because we just can't not ask the questions,
right,
and pursue the next link.
Yeah, I think for me anyways, it was a big just loss of purpose. I was going to grow up to be the next Billy Graham. I thought, I thought I was, I'd been on all these mission trips, had a very vocal, and like at the end of the day, like, I was trying to be as authentic as I could at the time with the faith lens that I had of the world. And then realized, though, like I shared this with, people, that like, I built some intentional relationships. Like, I was authentic with those people. And yet there was times where I realized, like, the authenticity ran out when I realized they didn't want to accept Jesus, or I felt like, where can this friendship really go if we're not equally yoked, kind of thing, and then like, how authentic are you really in building a relationship with people if then you've already drawn a line in the sand in your mind, and like, just realizing like, yeah, like, because I'm not a church going Micah anymore, like, yeah, like, there's just friends who just, we're not hanging out anymore. Yeah, they're not interested, because it's like, you're not in my circle, you're not in my worldview right now, and you're asking questions that are contrary to my worldview, or you're pressing against, the laws or the untouchables, and it's And to me, it's just like, if I stop asking the questions, then like I can't unlearn what I've learned, and I can't unsee what I've seen. And so to stop asking questions, like you're saying, it's like, I will be discontent the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And yet I'm content not being Billy Graham, for sure.
Right.
I'm okay with not having that lifestyle. And I don't know, like just a perspective shift of like when Ferguson happened in college, and just seeing like my eyes were just awakened to like, wow, I've lived my whole life, thinking I'm not, I'm not overtly racist, but then realizing how complicit I am into like this whole racist system that's going on. And like, oh, like I grew up poor, and but there's difference between rural and urban poverty, and just like I had access to get to college, I had a job, I was getting paid on the table, and just I can just see the steps of how like I worked hard in my life, and yet that doesn't mean other people aren't working hard, but they're just the stereotypes and the things that you realize are buried deep down in you that then replicates into people going into law enforcement. Those same people write policies and make decisions for other folks. And so I don't know, at some point I realized like, if I'm going to do something with my life, it's got to be for the betterment of people. And like Jesus said, literally, like, on earth as it is in heaven. And my whole thing is, if I can bring heaven to earth, if I can make this a little bit better place, then maybe I'm at least, like you're saying, I may not know if I'm going forward yet, but I at least I'm doing something. At least I'm making some use of my time here. And it's great to not have to feel like you have to have all the answers. It's really fucking great.
Oh, it's great.
Just to accept that, like, hey, like we're in a pretty big pit of a cosmos. We're pretty obscure part of the solar system. Yeah. And it's not my job as this carbon-based life form to have all the answers for people. But I can try to make myself better every day. So I don't know. I joke with. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll just say I joke with people, that God's either, a black woman or we're in a simulation. and in either case, the journey is meant to be sacred, spiritual, and I'm meant to learn from it. Something. Either way.
I like that. You know what? I think seeing as how I'm an hour ahead of you and I'm like super tired, that we should probably call it. I think sacred, spiritual, and meant to learn something is a great way to end the first part of this, and we can come back in and continue going. And I want to hear more about how you then moved from not just, not just moving beyond the more conservative, things that you experienced, maybe in a spiritual context to something a little more broad. But then how that then translated into how you move throughout in the world, and how you, like you were talking about, we're open to some of the more injustices that you have participated in and perpetuated, and that you have now tried to see an end to. So yeah, I think that'd be
Thanks
a good way.
Thanks for being here, Josh. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Micah.
Come back.
And I'm always praying for you.
Part 2, yes. I'll have to share a part. Pray for Micah's story. That's the goal. Every episode I'll share a little snippet of my childhood.
That sounds awesome.
All right. Thanks for joining me for the Pray for Micah podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe on this channel, and follow me on social media. Pray for Micah Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and yes, even TikTok. We'll see you next time.
You are now re-entering the normal world.